Welcome to Don't Forget to Breathe. I'm your host, Bruce Barker. So as I mentioned in the Season 3 preview, we're going to be revisiting some of those more powerful episodes from Season 2. Going to pull some excerpts out. We'll dive into those. But again, it's just going to be kind of that fireside chat just between you and I. Tonight, this is from the episode entitled, Did You Really Just Say That? This is about all of those comments, that have been made to me and I'm sure have been made to you that kind of make us shake our heads and maybe even have some internal explosions and some gasps of disbelief of, did you really just say that to me? There's been some new ones that have come along since this episode aired. I've heard several different ones from the different groups that I facilitate and some of what other parents have been hearing and have been subjected to. So we'll dive into those after we come back. So let's jump into that conversation in Season 2.
Did you really just say that? We're just going to get really raw with this because it can be a pretty raw subject or raw reaction to if we say, okay, did you really just say that? And we've done it too. I know I have said, when I look back and go, oh my God, why did I say that? And, trying to think of the right thing to say. So as we were coming into this episode, I had seen several posts on social media from friends of mine whose children have died, and it seems like some of them are in the first year and the second year and at various phases, and they're posting, I can't believe someone just said this or whatever, and they're offended and hurt and just as I was. And so as I reached out to them to ask if I could share some of that tonight, I know what my reaction was when I read it. Initially, I believe that as I point out some of this stuff, everybody's language filter is going to probably go away. I mean, I've had, and I think that those of you listening, you've probably heard most of what we're going to say tonight, and some of it is, it's almost like a classic line, right? Well, they're in a better place. Well, no, they're not with me. They're not with me. There is no comfort in saying that, or, she's not in pain any longer. I'm in pretty much agony 24/7. So that's not a comforting thought. And then some of these, and that's only a couple, because it, the whole over it thing comes up. Oh my God. As one of my friends had posted on social media, and I asked permission to repeat some of this without obviously saying their name. But one where she was just devastated. Her son died less than a year ago. In fact, I think it's like 9 months maybe. And she's seeing her doctor and trying to balance out because she needs antidepressants and is trying to balance that out. And his quote as she was, talking about it and just saying, and said it was real just hard and sarcastic, like, well, I'm sorry about your loss, but we've got another chance to get this right. Talking about the medicine. And it's like, really? I mean, and then he started to question her son, like, how was his, did he have bad blood pressure and cholesterol? Because it was a condition that something like that might lead to. But to question that, like, what was the point, of it was almost one of those, didn't you catch this kind of a thing. So I think I talked about in season one about not going down that road of what if, which we do, and it's really easy to do, is you question because you're the parent, you're supposed to protect, looking at yourself as, well, what did I miss? What did I not do? And that's ones that you put on yourself and that we work through in the grieving process. But then to have somebody else throw that at you, I read a lot of her posts, and we private message, and I know that pain that she's going through, and it's really, it's obviously devastating and really hard for her, just as we know, I mean, every single day. And then here's another thing that to mention along that same line. So her son was married, right? And so now, and we haven't, really covered this as a topic, I guess, but now her daughter-in-law, who is young, because he was young, is now lost the love of her life, and has found herself suddenly a widow at a young age. So my friend shared with me that just last week, that someone told her daughter-in-law that they had a man for her to meet. And like, are you kidding me? Like, it's been 9 months. And as she pointed out, like, the headstone isn't even there yet, and the dirt hasn't even settled. And someone's trying to set her up with someone. Like, now, and she didn't point out who it was that did that. And so for my friend, not only is she grieving the loss of her son, but she's also grieving for her daughter-in-law, a member of her family, the pain and the grief and the hurt she's feeling. That affects her as well. And obviously she was offended and cried and said no. And I mean, so another one of my friends who I just love dearly. In fact, she was there. We were working in the same building, and I know I mentioned her in season one, but she was there when I drove back to my shop after getting the phone call that Kristen had died. She knew Kristen, and she's the one that jumped in, and while I'm in just a complete fog, making the travel arrangements, doing all of this stuff for me. And her son died a little over a year ago. So she shared with me today, and the one of the things that she says happens often, right, is whether it's a text or they're at dinner or a phone call, and the question is, well, how are you? Right? And I know when somebody's asked me that question, depending, and most of the times, and just like she would typically answer, is, well, pretty good, thanks. Because do you really want to know how I am? Because if you got an hour, I'll let you know. But that's really not. But the response she's getting is what has been really hard, where they've said, well, it's good to see that you're moving on. I admire your strength, pushing through and going forward. And in her mind, she translates it as, well, good to see you haven't forgotten your dead son already. I mean, it's like, and you will never move on. There is no getting over it. And this is the one where it's like, yeah, really, are you serious? Like, and again, they're trying to think of the right thing to say instead of realizing there is no right thing to say. And that's kind of the purpose of this podcast is all of us who have experienced this, we're just kind of sitting around having this conversation, just like you would if we all got together and we're hanging out and we're having a beer or a glass of wine going, well, you think that's screwed up. So then somebody told me that the other part of this is hopefully there are those listening to the podcast who have not lost a child, but are walking the path with someone or know someone who has, or maybe that it just happened and they came across this podcast and went, all right, I need some pointers. I need to know because I don't know what to do. Well, we're telling you, there is nothing you can say that's going to fix anything or really help anything other than just making it known that you're there. That's it. There's other things that my friend brought up that resonate in different ways. One was her son was their only child, and so then somebody comes up and says, Happy Mother's Day. She's like, yeah, no, I'm not a mom. Or then asking, do you have any other children? Again, it might be like, no, we're not going to get into this right now. And I think that I respect that if you're not in a place that you want to do that, you're simply, I'm not in a place right this minute to have this conversation with you in this setting. So here's the deal, because I do that. And really, I just kind of trust my gut. She's been asked, do you have any kids? And then other things are saying like, hey, can I show you pictures of my kids? Like, I don't really care. Or as she said, yeah, let me see. Oh, they're precious. Which she's saying, I'm just performing and I'm faking. And I've done it. Yeah, to spare maybe that person or the conversation, or sometimes, why do I want to engage in this? So there's multiple reasons that you can just kind of fake it and walk through it.
So there was a lot happening at that particular time a few years ago with my friends, and they were very early in their journeys, and the things that people were saying to them were very impactful, as I'm sure they are when people say that to you. Some of the things that I've run across since then, and in these groups, as I've had more exposure to, more direct exposure to different people and where they are in their journeys and their stories, some of those that I've heard, especially for those that I know that have had miscarriages or their babies were 9 days old, a week old, less than a year old, and comments that they've heard from people is, well, at least you guys are young and you can try again. That I'll just let that sit with you, because I know you've had a reaction to that, and maybe if your story is similar, you've had the same thing said to you. There's more that have come along. There's actually there's a show on Apple TV right now. It's called Stick. Without throwing out a spoiler, there is a character in that show who has lost a child. In one of the episodes, someone said to this person who had no idea, well, if you had kids, you would understand. I know I had a reaction when I heard that, and saying something to the screen. Not that that was helpful. And then obviously the characters did as well. So I think, that's another one of those that, sure, they had no idea, but it's, it's minding those words and just trying to just be nice, because we just don't know. We just don't know where someone is in their life, what they've experienced, where they are on their journeys. I took out of that, let's just be kind. I mean, let's face it. Friends, family, even acquaintances, they're going to keep saying things to us that hurt, things that cut, that feel disconnected or even uncaring. And when you're a grieving parent, those words can sting in ways most people will never understand. But here's the truth. It's usually not because they don't care. In fact, it's just the opposite. They do care, but they just don't understand. They haven't been through what we've been through. They haven't been taught what to say or even how to be truly present with someone in deep grief. They want to help, but in most cases, they don't know how. An example is a few months after Kristen died, I was in the greeting card section at a Target looking for a birthday card, and I noticed this woman standing near the sympathy cards, picking them up one by one, reading them, putting them back. She looked confused, lost, really. So I walked over and I asked, it looks like you're having trouble finding the right card. Can I ask what kind of loss it was? So she told me her friend had just had a miscarriage and she wanted to get something for her and her husband, but nothing seemed to say the right thing. And I told her that's because none of them do. None of these cards will come close to saying the right thing or offering any real comfort. So she looked at me and she said, well, then what do I do? So I shared with her that my daughter had died just a few months earlier and that if I could offer any advice, it would be this. Just get a blank card and simply write, I know there are no words I can say right now that will help, but I am here for you. Whenever you need me, I will not walk away. I will walk with you as much as you will allow. I said, that's it. Just presence, just love. Because conversations or even the avoidance of conversations about grief, especially the death of a child, make most people really uncomfortable. These aren't everyday normal chats. And because of that, many people, they'll just shut down or they'll say something that really misses the mark. And we've talked about some of those things that people will say. But as I've said many times before, one of my biggest hopes for this podcast is to normalize the conversation around grief. I mean, we live in a world where loss happens every day. And those of us who've lived it, especially those who've experienced the unthinkable, the out of order loss of a child, we need more than cliches. We need comfort. We need presence. We need understanding. We need hope. And then ultimately we need healing. So if you're listening and you're grieving, I hope this reminds you that you are not alone. And if you're someone walking beside a grieving friend, know this: you don't need perfect words. You just need to show up. We're just going to wrap that up tonight, and there'll be more of these where we'll revisit some of the season 2 podcasts and take some of those excerpts out and talk about those a little bit. We have some parents that are going to be sharing their stories. I'm just still going through some editing on that. That will be coming up soon as well. So until next time, thanks for joining. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. I'm not a licensed professional, just a parent who's experienced unimaginable loss. This isn't meant to replace help from a therapist, doctor, or other mental health professional. If you're struggling, please reach out to someone qualified. You're not alone. And my contact email is bruce.barker61@yahoo.com. That's BRUCE.BARKER61@yahoo.com.